Hello everyone, welcome to Gnostic Alchemy. My name is Genevieve Akal, I'm a Gnostic priestess. And happy alchemical Easter, the time of year where the great power, the great Sophia, the great spirit is asking us to crucify a part of ourselves in order to be regenerated and move higher in our evolution and expansion of Christ consciousness. So this is a Gnostic sermon, and I'm going to give it to you from an early Christian perspective. This is before the onset of the institution of Christianity and the obliteration of the mother principle of God. Early Christians were shamanistic or animistic, and from my perspective and my gnosis, I have expanded into deeper connection with God and Christ consciousness through the wisdom of the mother, who is Sophia. And before we begin, I'm just going to show you this little replica of Asherah I made. Look at her. This is an Asherah pole or Asherah statue, and this is what the early mother looked like in the ground of Palestine, modern day Palestine, right? This is the mother to the ancient Israelites. We had a mother. I made a replica of her. You can look her up, Asherah. Thousands and thousands of these have been found in the ground of Palestine. So in the soil of ancient Israel, which is Palestine, we have a mother. And she was revered and loved, and these little statuettes were put under every tree, and they were put in every high place on every hilltop. And from 800 to 600 BCE, this is when a certain sect, an elitist sect, called the Jerusalem Establishment, or the Yahweh-only cult, came in. And they specifically obliterated Asherah out of the story. And they murdered her priests and priestesses. And they enforced a very rabbinical form of Judaism with a very kind of genocidal Old Testament God, Yahweh. And look at what we see today. So when I talk about the Gnostic perspective of spirituality, I'm talking about thousands of years ago, way back when we revered our mother. And she was represented by a tree. So this brings me to my Easter message, right? I'm going to just show you an image on the screen, a beautiful artwork made by a Christian mystic, Hildegard von Bingen, from the 12th century. You can see here, she calls this tending to the tree of life. You see this circle of life and this person tending to the tree and all its facets and seasons. So if you're new to these videos and the animistic Christ perspective, I suggest watching a video called Sophia's Seasons and the Christ Oil, because this is where I explain this early Christian perspective where we are very connected to the Earth Mother, the green. The Father's beloved is our mother. There's a wisdom embedded in nature, in the earth. She is not there to be exploited. She is not there to be suppressed. She is there to guide us. And when we nest into her wisdom and her cycles and rhythms and seasons, we go every year on this circle, we go on a hero or heroine's quest. There is a myth, it's a living myth. And Sophia, the goddess, this great wisdom, Asherah around us, in our hearts, the language of our hearts and nature. This wisdom is like our guardian, like our Gandalf through our story. And she brings circumstances and situations and symbols and whatever your personal quest language is. It's very highly individuated for each person. But she meets the hero or heroine when they decide to go on the quest. And the beginning of the story, this wheel of the year, that the ancient Christians loved and rooted into and learned from and expanded into Christ consciousness because of. This story begins today, this time of year. Easter time, vernal equinox, March equinox. These equinox points and the solstice points are the true cross of Christ. And this rhythm and cycle that we go around in the seasons with the mother, this is what opens us into Christ consciousness. And the story begins, like I said, now at this time of year. And this myth of the dying and rising God, like we see in the story of Jesus' crucifixion, this myth of the Savior dying on a cross, being in hell for 3 days, and then rising again, retrieving the keys of heaven and then rising again. Now, this is not the first time we see this myth or these themes come up. Thousands of years before the Christian story, in many cultures, there is the story of the dying and rising God, and it is celebrated also at this time of year. Because we're coming from out of the underworld, right? We've been in the dark part of the year, the subterranean, the lower part of the chakra system, right? So this story also happens in the body. If you're familiar with the wisdom I share, it also happens in the chakra system. So we've been in the lower chakras, and it's subterranean and emotional and felt and confusing. And now when we come up to the equinox point, we're coming out of the dark and we're meeting the light, and there's a fertilization of mother dark and father light. And we've been through our third act. So last year, March, we started a story, we went through our journey, 3-act journey, and we embodied this in this last act. And the embodiment of our last year's story is also the stepping out of our new story. So the cycle continues. The hero and heroine's journey just keeps going round and round. And as we embody, we step into it again. And this stepping in point, an embodiment point, is the crucifixion point. And like I said, we have this myth coming up in across ancient cultures, and they celebrate it at this time of year. And one of the oldest ones is Inanna, Ishtar, a Sumerian myth, 2500 BCE. Inanna is in heaven, the queen of heaven, and she hears the call of Ereshkigal, her sister, in the underworld, almost like the shadow self calling up. So Inanna makes the decision to descend out of heaven, out of consciousness, down into the underworld, the subconscious. She goes through 7 gates and she gives off her robes, her vestments, her jewels as she's going down deeper and deeper into the underworld until she's naked. Just like we see Jesus walking with his cross and his robes are being ripped, right? He's taking all his egoic identifications are being taken from him, just like Inanna, right? She arrives naked in the underworld. And I suggest reading the story, it's really interesting, but I'm just going to give you the major themes. When she meets with Ereshkigal, Ereshkigal is bitter, hurt, in pain. She's the shadow self, the underworld self. And she strikes Inanna dead and hangs Inanna from hooks, hangs her corpse on hooks for 3 days as well, 3 days and 3 nights. Just like Jesus, right? Inanna is dead. And then Enki, the wisdom, sends his emissaries, 2 emissaries, and they come into the underworld, and he says, go to Ereshkigal, and if she laments and says, oh, my heart, my pain, you lament too. I'm just checking my time there. So they go into the underworld, and Ereshkigal's like, oh, my heart, and they say to her, oh, my heart. Oh, my back, oh, my back. They mirror her, meaning they witness her. They witness her in her anguish, which is kind of like what we do to ourselves in the underworld space, right? As we're dying to something old, as we're crucifying an old aspect of the self, we are witnessing the death and we are feeling the death. And if we sit with the eyes of wisdom over ourselves and we allow the pain and we witness the pain and we mirror the pain to ourselves, and from this mirroring, that's when Ereshkigal says, what do you want? Thank you, what do you want? And they say, we want Inanna's body. And she gives it to them, and they revive her with the bread of life and the waters of life. and Inanna is revived, resurrected, just like Jesus. So when Jesus is resurrected with the keys of the kingdom, those keys are his, the key is his having died to a part of himself, having felt it and mirrored it and been in there with the shadow. And then he is resurrected and made new, born new. Just like Inanna, she is resurrected and moves back up the gates into heaven, right? So this myth of the dying and rising god or goddess is in us at this time of year. Because just as plants are coming through the soil, right? A plant is wanting to grow. It wants to move to the light. It wants to burst up through the soil. So too are we. So too are we. And I love Hildegard van Bingen, this Christian mystic from the 12th century, because she came up with a word called viridatus. Viridatus is the greening power of the divine. It's a mixture of veritas and truth. Truth, the Latin word for truth and the Latin word for green. So green truth, right? And it's no surprise. So from my Gnostic perspective, the Christian calendar and the observances are not just empty observances. It's not just some story about a guy called Jesus who did this. It's a story about what I do in myself each year. It's a living myth. The story of Jesus is in my heart and it lives in me. And it calls me to crucify myself at this time of year, right? Because that's when nature is doing it. She's coming through the soil, and to be born and to grow each year. We're like beautiful big trees, and each year we embed ourselves into the cycle. We grow stronger and bigger like a massive baobab, right? The tree mother, Ashura. The journey is through the green, the tree. We are the tree of life. Tending to the tree of life is tending to this journey, this living journey. So it's no surprise that Mary, the Virgin Mother, has her Annunciation on the 25th of March, right? Meaning the angel Gabriel says, will you carry the Christ child? Will you carry the child? And she says, yes, I will, right? And then 9 months later will be the 25th of December, where she will give birth to that child, right? In the myth. Now this myth is an alchemical myth. So right now we are each being asked whether we will carry the Christ child in you, the higher part of you, the inner child in you, the purest being in you, the thing in you that needs emotional well-being, needs honoring, loving, respectful connection, needs peace in your environment, needs sovereignty, needs creativity and expansion. That's the Christ child in you. Think of yourself as a kid before life and dysfunction took place, right? Running around in your joy, in your play, in your quest. So it sounds like, it sounds tough, like a crucifixion of the self, and it is tough sometimes because we get used to depleting patterns. We get used to depleting relationships and ways of being. But we're leaking out of our sacrum, we're leaking our emotional energy out, our power, our creation energy is being leaked out. We are not nurturing the Christ child within, the inner child within, when we are in these patterns. So right now, each of us will have an awareness because we've come through the subterranean. So this story we go through each year, the cycle, also takes place in the chakra system of the body, right? And you can watch a sermon called Sophia's Seasons and the Christ Oil if you want to understand more. So not only is it a personal living quest and myth, but it comes up through the system. So we've been in the root just after December solstice. We went into the root and the sacrum, the emotional subterranean, the dark and the cave. We're feeling things, we're intuiting things, right? Now these big emotions and these waters, I've said before that at that time of year, between the root and sacrum, the Orphic egg, the cosmic egg, is deposited in the womb of our being. The potential for something new. Any potential lives in this egg, right? That's why I think the egg is celebrated at this time of year. It's not just because eggs are hatching all around us and fertility and life is back in the seasons, but that life is in our bodies. We are the tree of life. Our nervous system looks like a tree. We are this nature itself. It's in us. So the egg is also in us. This potential. And if you've seen a bean sprout, right? You see the egg and the little sprout come out, like the serpent, right? Now the serpent, the sprout, wants to drive up through the soil and reach the light. It wants to traverse from the womb all the way up the chakra system into the crown, into the thalamus, which will happen at December 25th. It will open into the crown, right? 9 months later. So at this time of year, we're being asked to bring our awareness to ourselves and step into the journey. This is the call to adventure. The beginning of the story is the call to adventure for the hero or heroine. And you see in movies, they never want to take it on. It's nerve-wracking because we've been doing life in a certain way and it hasn't been fulfilling us, but we're used to it. And it's scary to let go of unhealthy patterns, right? So there's a fear there, and the hero doesn't want to step into the journey. There's this tussle, right? There's an underworld journey. There's a dying to self. To step into the journey and allow that root to keep growing up the system. So we're coming out of the sacrum, right, the waters, and equinox, and we're moving slowly into Manipura, right, the solar plexus chakra, which is fire, where the water meets the fire. Father and mother meet. The fire must come over the water to purify the prima materia and let it keep growing through the soil, right? If we deny these things and we don't want to die to ourselves and we want to stay in our patterns of depletion, this sprout that wants to move up the system, the Kundalini life force, the tree, the sprout, it will turn back down and stay in the lower chakras of ignorance. Satan is the lower chakras. Satan is an aspect of the mother when we deny our growth. When we deny doing the hard thing for ourselves, when we don't take courage and step into a higher state of being, take on the journey, right? Because we're at the beginning of the story, and when we say yes and we say, I'm going to crucify this aspect of my ego, I'm going into the underworld and I'm doing it. And the mother and the wisdom and the bread and waters of life will replenish me. I will be resurrected. I can't feel it now, and I don't know how or in what way, right? But trusting the wisdom and the word, which is if you're brave enough and you take courage to follow the path of your emotional and heart fulfillment, your well-being, your peace, your emptying of self, of pathologies and patterns, your connection and creativity. It's scary, but when you follow that path, so much joy and honey and resurrection comes. So this is what we're being asked of right now. And also, it's interesting that Lent happens just before the crucifixion, right? Christians fast for 40 days. I've been doing mantra for 40 days. Because when we're in these subterranean waters, that's when Satan comes. So the fast, Lent, is about the story of Jesus in the desert, right? And Satan comes and says, here, he takes him to the edge of the cliff and shows him all the kingdoms and says, you can have all of this. You can have all of this wealth. You can have anything you want. I'll make you a king of this world. And Jesus says, no, I am sustained by the word of my Father. So it's very tempting in the subterranean emotional waters, right? We are tempted by our own ignorance, our own egoic fears, our own old patterns, our own unhelpful, insatiable desires, not healthy, pleasurable, sovereign desire, but insatiable, compulsive desire, right? So we are being asked to bring in the wisdom of the Father here, the true Father, not the Old Testament psychopath who murdered our mother, Ashura, and brought in a genocidal Yahweh alone cult, I'm talking about El when he had his wife Asherah beside him, father and mother, in equality. That's the true father. A father without a mother is not our father. So the true father sees us in our nature, in our struggle, in our story, and says, I love you. I'm not judging you. You're not a sinful piece of shit like the Old Testament God. No, I'm here with you. I'm in it with you. Take heart, my daughter and my son. I'm the father of discipline and structure and bravery. Can you pick up your cross? Can you walk it? Can you descend into that underworld like Inanna? Go and retrieve that part of yourself. Go feel it. Go die to it. Because this is the truth. If you're brave enough to do this, you will be resurrected into new life. New expansion of Christ within. That's what the Father is to me. He's my guide. He's my guiding light. And I know that even in this pain and the struggle of what it is to be human and to grow, because it's hard to grow, I know that my Father's word sustains me, which is I will be resurrected. This will pass. And I will come into a higher being, even though I don't understand it now. So, just checking the time again. So this is the call for us right now, is to be brave and take on the journey. You're coming into the fulfillment and the embodiment of your last journey. Think about last year, March. What started for you? What did you step into? You're embodying that now, and that embodiment is also you stepping out into your new quest, right? So the cycle each year is a story journey, and it's also in the body system. Now, one other thing I want to say before I go is I want to just take us to this scripture here in the second discourse of Great Seth in the Nag Hammadi. Bringing up the child of majesty from the region below. That's the title. We brought the child of the majesty hidden in the region below to the height. There I am in the aeons that no one has seen or understood, where the wedding of the wedding robe is. The child of the region below. The shadow of the region below. Ereshkigal in the shadows. The part of you that's in the tomb. The thing you must go and retrieve. You bring that child up from below. Will you carry the child? Angel Gabriel says to Mary. Will you carry the child and stay in awareness and love and compassion, but also courage and heart and bravery to step out of an old pattern, an old way, and bring that child up to the region above? The next verse I want to share here is from the Gospel of Philip. The mysteries of truth are made known in symbols and images. The bedchamber is hidden, and it is the holy of the holy. The bedchamber is the thalamus, which is up here, the pineal and the pituitary. And at Christmas, I did a sermon called You Are the Christmas Tree, where I talk about the chrism, the sacred secretion, the Christ oil, that comes down, fertilizes the egg at this time of year, and now that egg sprouts and grows, right? And we carry that growth up. And by the time we reach December 25th, it will have opened into the thalamus, right? It will open now at June 21st, this solstice, and at the next solstice. We go through this journey twice a year, right? But the fullness of the story, the full story will have taken place by December 25th. And the thalamus is the bedchamber. And you see this in ancient, in Renaissance art, when the alchemists were having to hide this wisdom because of the fanatical Catholic fundamentalist institution. The thalamus, you often see the enunciation of the Mother Mary, you. Will you carry the child of yourself? And behind her is a red bed. And that bed represents the thalamus in the brain. Because by the time we reach the end of this journey, if you are brave now, it's hard now, right? It's hard. We're at crucifixion point. Take heart. Be brave. Know where this goes. Know the myth. Understand this myth, because when you know this knowledge, you're brave and you know where it goes. So it's okay that we're in murky waters, because you're equipped with the word. Because by the time we reach June, it will open into awareness. You will have this chrism will have raised up the spine and opened into the thalamus and the optic thalamus. You will have been renewed in your vision and your mind. You will have renewal and expansion. And it happens again on December 25th, where you see the star at the top of the tree. Well, we're the tree, the nervous system, and this life force energy moves up and renews us in the thalamus. So bringing the child from the region below to the region above is an alchemical process of rooting into the system and rooting into wisdom and awareness and knowing, taking heart and being brave and evolving. And that will be the resurrection in the thalamus, right? So move through your story, and when we take on this journey, right, you take on the quest and the adventure presented to you now. This is the great wisdom of the living myth of the mother, the tree, Sophia, Ashura, is that it's alive. This consciousness is alive, and when we take on the journey, she's like, oh my goodness, welcome to the grand play I have set before you. Thank you for coming, my baby. I love you. Now let me bring situations and people and scenarios and symbols and animals and wisdom and all kinds of fun and intrigue, and I'm coming here to mirror you and to paraclete with you as the holy wisdom, the Holy Spirit. You've stepped into the journey, and thank you, because now I can play with you. And we're going to grow through our second act together. So take heart, step into your journey. Know that it's in the waters. We're coming out of the subterranean into the light. There is a death of something in the self. It is tough. Feel the feelings and know that resurrection and life, new life, comes on the other side of this. Carry the Christ within yourself from conception to fulfillment. Sending you so much love and blessings on this Easter weekend.